What's going on, guys? TG or ThunderGod here, and we got a pretty interesting video today. I brought along New Horizons. Hey, what's up, bro?
Don't know me. I'm just here to zest up the video a little bit.
Oh no, oh no. And today we have a pretty interesting topic. This topic's actually really heat. I have to give a quick shout out to my boy HC for recommending this comment or like this topic in the comments. If you guys have any dope topics you want to like see us do, drop that in the description. Not description. Man, I'm folding this intro. Drop it down below. But today we're talking about Obito versus Kabuto, and we're talking about their armies against each other in an all-out war, and who would have realistically come out on top in this scenario. And this scenario does have a bit of real like possibility within the confines of this series, saying that, you know, maybe they would have had a falling out over Sasuke before the war began, especially seeing that Obito had planned to use Sasuke for like Grenade Rebirth or something like that. There is some possibility there. Maybe they just disagreed or one tried to snake the other. It's not like they entirely trusted the other either, like Kabuto notes this. So there is a lot of plausibility here. And we're going to make a couple things clear before we get into this video. So Obito for this version will still have the 100,000 white Zetsu enhanced by Yamato for the sake of making this video simpler. And Kabuto in this scenario will still have the Jinchuriki as Edo Tensei on his side, as it's implied like he's the one who brought them over. Even though the Akatsuki had their corpses, they had Itachi's corpse and he was still able to get that, so he does have access to all their corpses. And we're not going to give those to Obito. So before we get into the discussion, we're going to kind of outline Obito and Kabuto's war assets, but describing exactly what they'll be having and like kind of what that means in reference to each other, like how strong certain parts of their arsenal are. So with that being said, we're going to get into the video. Like and subscribe if you're new here, all that good stuff, and let's get started. So starting off, we have Obito. He's going to start off, he has the 100,000 white Zetsu, who are enhanced by Yamato. So they're going to be like sharing the same strength they have with like that they did in the original timeline, pretty much. So they're pretty self-explanatory. We're going to talk about those in a little bit, but I'm just outlining those here. We also have the Geto statue. Now, the Geto statue is actually very impressive. It was able to toss around Choza and Choji. Choza being stated Konoha's highest war potential. And Choji doing like, he basically gains access to like the butterfly form, which like is 100 times multiplier. All this crazy stuff. Completely dismantling the remaining troops of the first and second company. He basically like nuked it with its lightning. The Earth-style Mountain Jutsu had no effect. This same Jutsu was able to like somewhat hold down the 10 tails for reference. And the Geto statue, on top of like, you know, basically being this giant humanoid beast that can like nuke the battlefield, is also very durable. And we see this with like Kakashi's Raikiri cable, Might Guy's 6-gate attack, and the 8 tails physical blows, all having no effect on it. Meaning it has an absurd amount of durability and will more than likely not take any damage. Like for reference, like when I talk about like Kakashi's Raikiri cable, it basically, he like uses it as a rope. It's not even like the idea of damaging the Geto statue isn't even possible. He basically just uses it as a rope to like trip it over, which is really funny. So it takes this barrage, takes no damage. So, you know, there's that. Obito also has the 2 through 7 tailed beasts. And their full forms. He's not gonna have the Jinchuriki this time around, but he will have access to like the, you know, the tail beasts themselves, and you know, all the crazy stuff that they're able to exhibit. And yeah, so Obito just really has, you know, his big army, and then these big, you know, either the tail beast or the Geto statue, along with like Obito himself to assist in the battle. So that's more so like Obito's war assets. Do you wanna handle Kabuto's real quick?
Yeah. So as we said like many times on each other's channels, like War Kabuto is very underrated, and especially his ability, like his Edo Tensei army, is kind of overlooked, that it actually kind of took on like the entire world basically, and was very successful in that. Of course, you have most of the Akatsuki under his arsenal. He's got a few Kage, he's got a few other people, and of course he does have the Edo Jinchuriki, but they don't have their tail beast powers. But in terms of kind of how these Edo Tensei stack up against like the White Zetsu army and the Geto statue and stuff, we know that at the end of the first day, the White Zetsu had lost 50%. They were at 100,000 strength. They went down to 50,000. And then the Shinobi Alliance went down from 80,000 to 40,000. But at the same time, the White Zetsu had help from some of the weaker Edo Tensei, such as like the 7 Ninja Swordsmen, like Kakuzu, Asuma, like not the strongest fighters that Kabuto had. So based off of that, we can kind of tell that like the White Zetsu are more like very rough estimation, kind of like a Jonin level, like one Zetsu is about the level of a Jonin, or like a bunch of them are the same level as like an army of Jonin, right? Because they weren't fighting like the stronger people in the alliance yet, like Naruto, B, Onoki, and Gaara, and people like that. But so, and of course, not all of these Edo Tensei are going to be doing as well here. Like in terms of like going against an army of 100,000 Zetsu, almost everyone is going to be very preoccupied, to say the least. I mean, people like Datara and Mu can fly and just kind of like evade all the Zetsu, which will help. But even like all the strongest fighters are going to be very, they're going to have their hands full, and it's going to be and not all the Edo Tensei are going to be do like equally as well. Like Kabuto is going to need a lot of area of effect attacks to work. So people like even like Raza needs to be like flooding the battlefield, and we need like Nagato just doing giant almighty pushes, Datara using his explosives, things like that. Like it's going to take massive effort to even take on this army, and I'm not even accounting for like talking about like the Ghetto statue or the tailed beast yet.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And something interesting to note too is that like Kabuto probably would have performed better against the Alliance if he had actually used Itachi and Nagato, his like stated strongest Edo Tensei, but he doesn't. Like they're moving, they don't even like encounter the battlefield. He just kind of keeps them on the side, so it kind of puts like into perspective how much more damage Kabuto could have done, and like how significant his Edo Tensei army is, and how it's kind of one of those like situations of like quality over quantity. Much. So that's pretty much summed up my thoughts entirely.
Yeah, and just like in terms of, I didn't really say much about how strong the Edo Tensei are, but even like 4 of the Kage were able to take on like Onoki and Gaara's divisions and take on heavy casualties, which is just not something we can see like Zetsu's doing. So, yeah.
So to paint a picture of this scenario, we'll just say like these two individuals and their armies are like on opposite ends of a large ass battlefield. And for Kabuto, right, because he does kind of like take a backseat role, and we'll talk about this more in the actual discussion. But he does have the option to enter the battlefield if he wants, but this does somewhat impact his Edo Tensei, and we'll talk about that a little later. But to start off, right, I want to make this kind of clear. The 100,000 white Zetsu are really just going to be acting as a stall force in this situation. We talked about this a little bit, but like the White Zetsu are essentially like relative to the Shinobi Alliance in the fact that like they both take 50% of the casualties after the first day. So they should be like somewhat on par. Maybe think the Alliance is a little stronger since the White Zetsu are boosted by Edo Tensei on their side. It's fine. They just should be relative in terms of like, you know, general Shinobi, like nameless Shinobi. It's really not feasible to say they would in any capacity go on to defeat the Edo Tensei. All they're here to do is just like keep them busy. And this is especially true since the Edo Tensei, you know, they're gonna continuously regenerate, not like any of the White Zetsu have any sealing abilities. So they really just exist to keep them busy for like Obito to kind of go on and do what he wants to do. You want to like talk about this?
Yeah, and just talking about like Obito's strategy at first, like if he's probably going to be able to identify quickly like who are the people that are really like tearing apart the White Zetsu, and he can use the White Zetsu to his advantage to possibly do something like sneak up on someone and kamui them. Like it's going to be very hard to fight Obito if you're just surrounded by like hundreds of Zetsu and then he comes out of the ground and tries to kamui you.
Yeah.
Like I can definitely see it's not a very like efficient way to take care of like all that Edo Tensei, but it can be very important. Like if he did that to Nagato, for example, who's not going to be mobile to start,
Yeah.
like that's going to be a very big hit for Kabuto. And even just as as TG was saying, like it's a stall tactic. It's just going to give Obito time to kind of decide what he wants to do. Like does he want to use the Ghetto statue to start obliterating the reanimation so he can try to do something like fight Kabuto or suck up some other reanimations, or he can decide to use the tailed beast. Just in general, like these White Zetsu are just enabling Obito to do what he wants to do, whatever that may be.
Yeah, and we were like talking about this before like the recording and whatnot, like how Obito would go about like approaching this type of scenario. And we really saw that there's going to be a big focus on Ginkaku and Ginkaku in this situation, right? Because Obito actually kind of, he doesn't act out of character. He just makes somewhat of a brash move in the original timeline. In terms of like going for, I believe it's Genkaku is the one who's sealed. If it's not, I'm sorry, don't crucify me. But it's yeah, but essentially, right? He goes, he kind of like pulls up to the first and second division. With the the ghetto statue, wreaks havoc, takes the amber jar and dips out. So there's kind of like this idea of that. What would he do in this scenario, especially considering he's probably more than likely gonna want the Nine Tails chakra as somewhat of a failsafe. Do you want to talk about like how this like kind of like would do and like how this would happen?
Yeah, it actually turns out like almost no one would probably think of this just off the top of their head, but Kenku and Ginku are like an X factor in this fight for both sides for many reasons. So talking about what happened originally, so after the beach battlefront where like the Zetsu and the reanimations were all defeated, Obito pulled up and he basically took the Amber Purification Jar because he wanted some of the Nine Tails chakra as like a failsafe for awakening the Ten Tails. He takes the Amber Purification Jar, and we actually do see Kabuto's reaction. He's like, "Oh well, I guess he has Kingu now. Like, I guess he's just getting desperate." And he does know that he only has one tail, the Eight Tails, and he only has like a little bit of the Nine Tails chakra. But it doesn't seem to phase Kabuto for some reason. And even later on, like the next day, when Naruto and B are fighting Itachi and Nagato, his strategy in that fight, he says to himself that he wants to take and like capture the Eight and Nine Tails and use it as leverage against Obito. So it really doesn't seem like he thinks that Obito can awaken the Ten Tails with just a little bit of the Eight and Nine Tails chakra, because he does know that Obito does want to awaken the Ten Tails,
Yeah.
but he's just not alarmed at all by the prospect of Obito taking it. So in this situation, just to like establish this, like Kabuto will probably use Kinkaku and Genkaku because he doesn't see like really any risk in using it.
Yeah, and we were kind of talking about this. And so we have Ginkaku and Ginkaku on the battlefield, right? So with that knowledge, it seems very likely that Obito's gonna make like not somewhat of a beeline for it, but that's gonna be like on his radar as that was his failsafe in the original continuity. We also encounter another problem for Obito, that being like, okay, they're not gonna be sealed in the Amber Purification Jar. So how does he get them? Well, we actually do have somewhat of an answer from this, and like this kind of does stem the discussion a bit. And it kind of depends what Obito does. He can either like rampage with the ghetto statue first. Maybe he clears out the battlefield a little bit, but again, it doesn't matter too much since like the Edo Tensei continuously regenerate, and it's not going to really have that much of an effect. It really just kind of serves to like stall for more. In which case, he's going to more than likely bring out his Tail Beast, which will leave a lot of the Edo Tensei options. We'll talk about that in a second. And the reason he's going to bring out his Tail Beast is because what he actually attempted to do against Naruto in the original fight is he had the Four Tails put Naruto in his mouth, and he attempted to pull Sun back into the ghetto statue with Naruto in his mouth to absorb the chakra. So he could unironically, right? This is a canon strategy. He could actually try and eat Ginkaku or Ginkaku, or like send him to the Kamui dimension and then pull them out and throw them in one of the Tail Beast's mouth, and then bring the Tail Beast back into the ghetto statue, which is, it works. It's a viable strategy. It sounds so funny, but it really is something he has tried. So that is a viable strategy, and he does have a way to absorb them. Now, with that being said, when he does summon the Tail Beast, it isn't going to go like that smoothly, since you do have shinobi like Itachi who can light them up with a Matarasu. You have somebody like the third Raikage who's known for bruising with a Tail Beast stronger than each of them, so he can go like toe-to-toe with them, like probably knock a couple out. It just kind of really depends. And for example, like the third Raikage is not going to get touched by any of the white Zetsu. Like he's just going to literally run through like quite... They're not... He can literally just probably like one-shot a couple from like just running, just due to his lightning armor. And you have shinobi like Kimimaro with his layer of bones that isn't going to get touched either. All these shinobi. So there is a bit of discussion there. What's your thoughts on all this? And like what it, him doing this strategy, and like him, what if he brings out the Tail Beast? What's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think when it comes to Genku and Genku, like that may like we said, that's kind of like his backup plan. So he's not just gonna. I don't think he'll immediately just go for that.
Yeah.
But he may see that like his Zetsu are starting to run thin, and then he may decide, okay, maybe he can even just sneak up on Genku and Genku while they're surrounded by white Zetsu and take one of them. And he doesn't even necessarily have to put them inside like one of the tailed beasts per se, because when he did end up putting like that nine tails chakra in the Geto statue, Kinkaku was also sealed in that Amber Purification Jar. It wasn't just the chakra. Yeah. So he's really throwing Kingu in it. He just happens to be sealed inside of a jar. So it's not that far fetched to say that he could just throw like Kamui Kingu into the ghetto statue, because he doesn't really have to worry. Like when the tail beast hosts were alive, he couldn't just kill the host immediately because that would kill the tail beast. He doesn't have to worry about the ear because all the animations aren't alive. So it's very viable. The really only thing he has to worry about is the tailed beast, because Kabuto knows that he needs all tailed beasts to awaken the Ten Tails. So if Kabuto takes advantage of that, he could use someone like Mu or Itachi to kill one of the tailed beasts, and it just totally destroys Obito's whole plan. So he has to be very careful about that.
Yeah, that is a problem if he does lose any of the tail beast. I will say too, using the tail beast isn't a foolproof strategy either for Obito, as it does consume a lot of his chakra. So it's not something like, if he has them out, he's not gonna keep them out for long, per se, or anything like that. Like, it seems a lot more. He seems like a lot more comfortable just having the ghetto statue and fighting alongside that. So that is like a big issue for him. And again, like the tail beast. I don't want to say they don't accomplish much, right? But tail beast bombs really don't matter unless he like attempts to like maybe atomize Kabuto himself. In which case maybe that could be viable, but that doesn't even really serve him that much of a purpose. Just due to the fact the Edo Tensei would continue. Maybe you could say he would go try and fight Kabuto, because Kabuto does tell him how to stop the Edo Tensei. He does say like, you could just put me under Genjutsu with your Sharingan. In which case that kind of gets into like Obito versus like Sage Mode Kabuto, which is not the point of the video, but I guess we could talk about that in a second. But there is that like possibility as well. It just really depends. But the way we see it, generally he's more than likely, just due to the fact that the the White Zetsu are not going to beat the Edo Tensei. We cannot stress that enough. They strictly are there to just stall the army out and give Obito time to like explore other options. And whether or not he uses the Ghetto statue or the Tail Beast does kind of change the discussion a bit. I believe personally, if he brings out the Ghetto statue, nobody's going to be really able to touch it. Maybe say like Itachi's a Matarasu or anything like that. Maybe you could argue like lore moves, a particle style could also like damage it, which is a big one. But again, not a lot of people are really going to be able to take it on. So there's a couple ways this can go, but generally we do see like when Obito's army does start losing, he is going to see Ginkaku or Ginkaku on the battlefield and go for them. And we kind of talked about this when we were talking about like this matchup before as well, in the fact that Kabuto does not like rescind or rescind, however you say that. I might have just pronounced that wrong. Whatever. Obito, we were talking about this, but we were talking about the possibility that Kabuto might be able to bring back some of the Edo Tensei and like put them back in their coffins. Do you want to talk about this a little bit? I'd like to take you had with like Kabuto bringing back his army.
Yeah, like and even in terms of just using his army, he may not just use every single fighter he has at once. But even in that case, Kingu will probably be in his first wave, as he did use them on the first day.
Yeah.
But in terms of just like Kingu, like if he sees Obito trying to put like one of them into the Ghetto statue, that may alarm him. But as we talked about earlier, it didn't really faze him when it happened in the original timeline. But even if like, let's say he thinks something funny, or like he just wants to be super safe, it's probably not that likely that he's just going to end up like unsummoning Gengu, because like we did see like when he was fighting against the Tsuchikage and company on Turtle Island, when he was able, once he got Yamato, he just unsummoned Deidara like quickly, just like that. But in other situations, like when Itachi was sealing Nagito with a Totsuka blade, he wasn't able just to like unsummon him. So it'd just be kind of very uncharacteristic and just plain lame if like we saw that he was taken into the Kamui dimension and then Kabuto unsummoned him.
Yeah.
Which who even knows if he could be able to unsummon like either Gold and Silver Brother if they're in the Kamui dimension, or if Obito's like quickly throwing them into the Ten Tails. Like it just wouldn't be very realistic based on what the series has shown us.
Yeah, and you actually like kind of outlined like an issue with Kabuto's strategy in the war, and I will say like Kabuto's impressive in the fact that he's able to balance 5 battlefields all at once. That's actually kind of crazy that he's doing all this at the same time. But there is like there is a degree where like Kabuto's just kind of throwing these people on autopilot and just kind of letting them fight, which does lead to a lot of them making decisions or like making moves that lead to them getting sealed. Like a big one people point out is Rasa. Rasa makes like an Edo Tensei automatic move that allows Gaara to seal him. And you will kind of see this in the war, that Kabuto selectively like kind of control certain fighters depending on the importance of the battlefield. So for example, right, like you kind of see this, he doesn't really stop Gengetsu or like control someone like Gengetsu or Lord Mu. Nah, it's like when Nagato's fighting Naruto, that's kind of when he takes the reins, or maybe like the third Raikage, when he fights that clone of Naruto, he takes the reins there. So if he's dealing with an entire army, it's kind of going to be difficult to say like where Kabuto controls what. But I will say, like, if the Tail Beasts come out, I can definitely see Kabuto, like, kind of leaning into controlling some of his stronger fighters, like Itachi, maybe Lord Mu or the Kage. You know, so it kind of depends, like, how you view it on that front. But essentially, like, if a lot of these fighters are on, like, their autopilot state, it's not going to be good for Kabuto. And if this kind of, like, also adds to the fact that if Kabuto does decide to, like, join the fray, he's not going to be able to like manually make them move as well, because he's able to fight, right? He's basically able to fight Itachi and Sasuke while some of his Edo Tensei are still fighting in the war, but he's not able to like manually make them do stuff while he's fighting, because again, he's not at that little table, like the little. So he does have to be sitting, he does have to be aware, and he does kind of have to selectively choose. And if he enters the fray, he's no longer going to be able to like manually, like he can make them do it, but he's obviously going to be preoccupied with fighting himself. You know what I'm saying? So there is a big issue with like Kabuto's war strategy overall. But let's say like the Tail Beasts do come out. Kabuto does have a lot of answers for the Tail Beasts. He has Chibaku Tensei, which could potentially steal one of them on the battlefield. Making it a lot harder for Obito. We don't know if like the Ghetto Statue chain would just like pierce through the rock and grab like the Tail Beast possibility. Granted, Nagato does have to absorb a lot of chakra from those Zetsus, since he does have gray hair, so there is some there. We talked about Itachi's Amaterasu, the third Raikage's Hell Stab. Maybe you could look at Ono or Lord Mu's Particle Style. That's another good one. Maybe you could say like someone like Raza could like try and seal them down with his sand. There is a lot of options for, you know, Kabuto's Edo Tensei. What is your thoughts? Like, do you have any other like other thoughts on like Kabuto versus the like the Tail Beast, like, and what they could potentially do there?
Yeah, there's just like he does have a lot of options because he does have like a lot of very strong fighters here, but there's not like one particular thing I necessarily see happening.
Yeah.
Because I do think that he is gonna like target like the tailed beast, but like he's going to have to take time by himself to control one of the Edo Tensei, which he probably can only do one at a time. Like, I'm pretty sure we've only seen him like directly control an Edo Tensei one at a time. So if he tries to do with Onoki, just fly over all of the Zetsu, or not Onoki, but Mu, try to fly over all of the Zetsu and try to take out one of the tailed beasts, it may just like spook Obito into just putting all the tailed beasts back in the Ghetto statue, for example, or Obito may just get spooked and then decide just to obliterate everything with tailed beast bombs, for example. So it is very viable, especially when there's so much going on. Like, Kabuto could very easily like sneakily get some type of attack past Obito's awareness and take out one of the tailed beasts and just ruin the whole thing for Obito. But then at the same time, like, there's nothing like very clear cut I see happening here.
Yeah. Regardless, at some point, while his 100 white Zetsu are getting absolutely cleaned up, he is gonna have to make that transition. And if he does, the reason we kind of lean towards Obito, right, is due to the fact that we like talked about he has a more clear win con, and the reason being, right, he can actually initiate the 10 Tails transformation if he does get Genkaku or Genkaku, which is very interesting because he kind of loses both of his big assets, that being either the Ghetto statue or the Tail Beast, and he kind of has to actively go out of his way to protect the Ghetto statue. Do you want to talk about this? Because he actually does have to take some time while the Ghetto statue like transforms.
Yeah, it is almost like an all or nothing move because, like we've been saying repeatedly, the Zetsu are just a stall tactic to enable like the more bigger threats like Obito has, like Kamui, the Tailed Beast, and the Ghetto statue in general. But if he does start awakening the 10 Tails, the 10 Tails, the Ghetto statue's out of play, the Tailed Beast are out of play.
Yeah.
And that basically just creates a very vulnerable Ghetto statue that Kabuto is going to focus 100% on. Obito does have the Uchiha Flame formation, I think that's what it's called. Yeah. And that's like a very strong barrier, as we saw. Like, it took the 9 Tails and the 8 Tails combining Tailed Beast Bombs to even break it. So in terms looking at like Kabuto's attack power, he doesn't really have anything on the level that we see. There are things like perhaps Particle Style and Amaterasu that could perhaps get through it. We haven't really seen like those hacks like that kind of interact with barriers, though.
Yeah, you could maybe say like
this.
yeah, Lord Mu like flies over it maybe. Like he
Yeah.
just flies all the way up, you know what
Well-
I'm saying? Yeah, just to like the top of
not-
it. Yeah, but
Yeah, I don't know if Obito can close the roof or not, but I guess it kind of just does. Like, we don't really feel like Kabuto has a very good chance at breaking Uchiha flame formation, at least in a timely fashion,
Yeah.
and that kind of segues into like the person we've been avoiding this entire time, which is Madara.
yeah, and I want to say something before we get into Madara too, because that we're gonna talk about this. But like you said, like the Uchiha flame formation barrier is very potent. And like there like a direct feat for you guys is like just like what New Horizons said. Also like the A-Tails just tries to punch it, and it gets its like hand burned from like trying to punch it, just gets really repelled. So it's like you kind of have to look at like, okay, what's gonna be hitting as hard as a tail beast? And it's like we have a few people or like beyond a tail beast, like even like, you know, it gets kind of harder to say, and you really just have to kind of like, I don't want to turn this discussion into like the top two, right? But realistically, like Gengetsu's like steam hip isn't gonna break the barrier. We have a lot of like Kimimaru's not gonna make a bone and just run at the barrier and go like chameleon dance and break that shit. He's not doing any of that. I'm sorry to tell you. Hanzo's not doing it, nothing, right? And this is like assuming. This is being generous, right? This is being generous and assuming like that they've dealt with the White Zetsu, which again I think is unlikely. We don't think they lose in any capacity, but like it's a little vague. But there should be a sufficient amount of time to where they're just stalled. That's pretty much the point we're getting at. But if he does get the two, you know, if he does get it underway, he puts it in the Uchiha flame formation barrier. Obito is going to be actively defending the Geto statue as it's extremely vulnerable. In which case, right? Kabuto. So the interesting thing about Madara, right? This is the interesting thing about Kabuto's approach to the war. He has pretty much all these high level Edo Tensei, right? They all get sealed. All of them. They're all like Nagato gets sealed. Itachi breaks free. It's all going down. Like it looks horrible. Everything's on fire. It's crazy. And he's like chilling. He's like, I got my ace in reserve. And like this ace in reserve was making Obito sweat hard. Like Obito wasn't really like, didn't feel pressure to work with Kabuto until he saw Madara. Kabuto kind of took control of the conversation completely by bringing out Madara. So it's a big deal, right? In which case, he's probably gonna see if he's ever getting pressured, or maybe he sees like Obito's like enacting this plan. He's like, all right, I'm gonna summon Madara, and Madara's gonna go to work and just end everything for me, right? What do you think happens when this goes about, bro?
It is such a funny scenario, but like I definitely do think that just the prospect of the Ten Tails being awakened, and Kabuto probably had like no idea how long it's gonna take, so he's not gonna be wanting to do like, okay, let me split up like half my forces, half of them fight the Zetsu, and then send people like Deidara over to like try to blow the barrier up. He's gonna be like, I need Madara and I need him right now. But here's the thing, Madara is going to prank Kabuto immediately. Because we do know, and I think prank is the right word for this, because we do know that Madara knows how to break out of the Edo Tensei, because when Kabuto got Genjutsu'd and tried to end it, Madara just used the signs to end the contract, and he was fine. He was able to break out of control.
He called it juvenile. He called it a juvenile. It's not holding him. It's just not. You know what I mean? But go ahead.
Yeah. So he's not, and I don't think Kabuto's gonna like bind his hands. He's gonna let Madara do what Madara does. Doing the entire war. So Madara is going to break out of it if he wants to. And we do know that he's going to want to, like, join Obito's side, because, like, for example, after Madara was done with the 5 Kage, he showed up to Obito. He was fighting Naruto and company, and he chose to fight with Obito in that moment, which we do know that a bit, you know, down the road in the war, he did betray Obito, and he used the opportunity there to team up and try to fight Obito, but as we saw, he didn't. It just wouldn't make sense that if he saw that the Ten Tails was being awakened, he'd be like, all right, that's great, and then just like kill Kabuto like a melee.
He would high five Obito and be like, nice, man. Like it would literally be exactly like what happened in the canon scenario. He would literally like reverse like sign, like get out of the Edo Tensei, hop over to Obito. He's like, bro, what are you doing right now? You're launching the plan half baked. You're fighting these yucks. It's like he would make 25 wood clones and proceed to start just bodying the entire Edo Tensei like alliance. It would be so bad. So no, they would proceed to just team up and just like either, you know, they would just systematically like take down the Edo Tensei. And even if you argued, right, they couldn't seal them, they could literally just have Madara's wood clones fight all these Edo Tensei while they go find Madara. Like one of them could defend the statue, either or Obito or Madara can go find Kabuto and kill him. And you know, Kabuto entering Sage mode doesn't change anything here. It really doesn't, because you know it's an open battlefield. And I'm not saying Sage Mode Kabuto's weak. We have a video on him. We think he beats the 5 Kage on his own, so we do think like he's on that level. It's just that we're not of the opinion he's on like that Obito to moderate tier. In my opinion, he's borderlining, like he's the top of the tier right below them. So it's just he's not going to make up the difference in this case, even if he joins the battle earlier or later. And in my opinion, right, if he actually joins it earlier, it's going to be more detrimental to him because he's not going to be able to like have his Edo Tensei do these AoE attacks. I'm not saying they can't, but it's like he can't like he's obviously has like better plays than their automatic response. Like he can strategize more than that. So it's going to be a little more detrimental, and him summoning Madara is just going to backfire like 10 times harder. And considering how calm he was the entire war and how much he had this up his sleeve, it would just be clipped. Like realistically, I'm going to be honest, like Madara would just Tengai Shinsei the battlefield and drop the double meteor. That would just kind of be that. I'm going to be honest. So Madara getting summoned is just the biggest L for Kabuto. There's just not too much to say there. And anything you want to say? I just feel like it's like, bruh, like it's bad, bro. It's just it's the biggest like no you reverse card I've ever seen, bro. Like what's your talk about it, bro?
Nah, I mean, I guess we kind of like try to like hide Madara in this video because like when we were researching, we realized that like that was gonna screw Kabuto over, and it's just like we kind of see that any outcome that comes out here, unless Kabuto kills like a tailed beast really early, like Madara is gonna have to come out, and then you know, as we've said, like it's just gonna be a prank.
It's gonna be really bad. In which case, you know, if the 10 tails comes out, like they're chilling. They're gonna sit on top. Everybody's gonna wonder why are there like things getting nuked for no reason. It's gonna be a thing. So it's pretty bad. So generally, like in this war versus war, or all out war, we do lean towards Obito, not because he necessarily has a stronger army per se, but more so because like his path to victory is a lot more obtainable. Whereas like Kabuto, right, to outline it, like Kabuto has to fight on Obito's terms. He has to like fight the army, and he kind of like has to like break through them to kind of jump Obito. Whereas Obito doesn't need to do that. He can kind of like phase through the battlefield, kind of take what pieces he wants, or maybe eliminate some people he wants to. And he's going to be able to BFR people pretty easily in this fight. They're going to be very preoccupied. They're not going to be able to fight the way they probably would either. They're going to be bound by like automated responses by the Edo Tensei. And Kabuto's not going to be able to like react in time to like Obito just appearing under the ground and whatnot. So it's just a lot tougher for Kabuto. And even if you like, so I'll put it like this. He has a stronger army. And had Obito not had this win con, he eventually would have wore down the 100,000 white Zetsu. And they're not stronger than his Edo Tensei army. It's just a matter of they should give Obito enough time to kind of go about his path to victory. It really shouldn't take that much longer for him. And he really just needs to grab one of the gold and silver brothers. And he should be able to do so with pretty relative ease. You know what I mean? So especially if they were like taken off guard by like, for example, like Daorui's laser circuits or something like that. Or even if they go into like, for example, right? Let's say Kabuto wants to wild out with them. If they both go into the version 2 states, doesn't matter. It's just they were still tagged by people like Kitsuchi, and even though they didn't take any damage, they still were hit or like caught off guard. So Obito's Kamui attempts should still be able to hit them. But yeah, essentially it's kind of like it's more so that Obito has an actual path to victory with these giant avatars that can clear out the battlefield. They don't really win him anything, but they are able to do that. Whereas Kabuto kind of has to fight out Obito's terms, and him like coming into the fight doesn't really change that. Do you want to like add anything to this, or like do you want to like add anything to this whole discussion?
No, it's really just kind of unfortunate circumstances for Kabuto because it's kind of in the dark on how like awakening the 10 tails works. Like if he knew that, you know, Kingyu and Ginku, just a portion of their 9 tail chakra could work, if he like wouldn't summon them, he'd probably have a very good chance of just winning. Yeah, because of all of his Edo Tensei. Like he has the stronger army, he just has like the worst circumstances almost.
Yeah, his win con is like, so he has to like it's like a battle of attrition for him to get his win condition out, and he can win it. He can win it. It's just that Obito's not gonna wait that long to allow him to win it. There's just no, and it's also like considering like Obito's individually stronger than like Kabuto himself and everybody in the Edo Tensei army, makes it so that he can like kind of pick and choose like who. And if he doesn't, he can always, you know, have one of like either the Tail Beast or the Ghetto statue. You know, both kind of having their own trade-offs. I think the Ghetto statue itself is a lot stronger. But he can have them mow him down, maybe catch one of the Edo Tensei when they're regenerating. He can have all that. But essentially, like the moral of the story is that considering the Edo Tensei did take a prolonged period of time to be beaten by like shinobi of relative strength to the White Zetsu, they should just be able to stall in a similar capacity. Maybe you could argue it one way or another, but they're not beating the Edo Tensei. They're just there to stall again. So that's the video. Do you want to do? Let's do a bonus round real quick. I'm gonna drop this on the spot. What if you think? If you think Madara was on like Kabuto's side? Do you think Kabuto takes that W? What's your opinion on that? Yeah, like talk about it. Let's add that in because you know maybe like a lot of people were looking forward to like the in-depth Obito versus Madara analysis, but what's your little opinion of like 2-second opinion like if Madara got revived on Kabuto's side and for whatever reason like opposed to like all variables did follow his will? What do you think happens?
It would be a crazy situation if we have Madara and he's awakened and he like immediately has to stop like the 10 tails from being awakened. But more than likely if Madara gets awakened, he can just kill all the remaining Zetsu like immediately with perfect Susanoo.
Yeah.
And then I think that you know, if the you can say that I'm not going to go into specifics, but the perfect Susanoo is pretty relative, like to like the full 9 tails. If he's able to break the Uchiha barrier and you add in like I don't know, like Amaterasu, like a Data C3 and whatever, I think he does break the barrier, and then I guess he cuts the Ghetto statue in half if he wants. Then after that, Obito's just screwed.
Yeah, like imagine him like bringing his sword out, like just going to slash it down. You have Datara with like a C0 or C3 bomb, and you have Itachi lighting it up. You have all these crazy things going down. Like that barrier is breaking. It's over. So I 100% agree. If we did get Madara, it does kind of turn into more of a wipe for Kabuto. I 100% agree. And again, you could maybe argue like the barrier gets broken in canon, but it's like Obito's going to be playing a lot more offensively, so he can systematically like take out whoever targets the barrier a lot easier. Just like, you know, he's got Madara's Gunbai, so he can reflect ninjutsu a bit into wind release. So he does have options with reflecting people's attacks and whatnot, and he does have options with like dealing with them. So there's all of that. But that's the video. We're going on 40 minutes now. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. We had actually a lot of fun recording this and talking about it. It was a really interesting topic. And we'll definitely try and do something like this in the future with like these large group scale battles. Apologies, it's a little hard to talk about like these micro variables. We just kind of wanted to paint a narrative of how this battle should go with kind of like acknowledging canon stuff. But that's the video. I'm not gonna hold you guys up. Like and subscribe if you're new, please. I'm gonna chill out. Chill out. All right, you guys have a good one. Go sub to New Horizons, all that good stuff, and I'll catch you next time.